Hey there, I'm Zack Attack, and my species is known as Homo sapiens. But if you wanted our full name, it would be Eukarya animalia chordata mammalia primates hominidae Homo sapiens. But we commonly call ourselves human. We name ourselves and other species through a science called taxonomy, which is an easier method to classify and organize organisms in relation to their closest relatives. Now, taxonomy has its roots in Greek language, with taxis meaning arrangement and nomia meaning method, or arrangement method, and that is exactly what taxonomy is in its simplest form. It's often called the world's oldest profession because we describe our surroundings, and this has likely existed since humankind first learned to communicate. Anyone can consider themselves a taxonomist. For example, have you ever sorted words or objects into alphabetical order? That alphabetical order is your arrangement method, your taxonomy. Even the word alphabet is subjected to taxonomic order, with alphabet coming from alpha and beta, the first two characters in the Greek alphabet. But the kind of taxonomy that a biologist uses is known as Linnean Taxonomy. Linnean Taxonomy was started by Swedish botanist Carl Linnaeus. He gave what many taxonomists describe as the starting point for taxonomy to grow and classify as much as possible. Linnaeus believed it was important to have a standardized naming system for all life on Earth. And in 1735, he suggested in his own published pamphlets that we order things through a hierarchical method, starting with the most general topics, the kingdoms, and moving to the most specific, the species. Over the years, we've changed this a little bit, and in this fashion, we've changed the classification scheme to domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genera, and species. He also suggested that we order things with a process called binomial nomenclature, or giving an organism two specific names by which to call it. In this case, the organism's genus and species names would describe the organism, like Homo sapiens. Linnaeus suggested that we use Latin words. Latin is lingua scientiae, or the language of biology, although Greek words are also sometimes used. When The Origin of Species was published 100 years later, the idea that classification should reflect Darwin's principle of common descent appeared. This caused the Linnaean method, or tree of life representations, to take off with enormous popularity in scientific works. Linnaean classification fit perfectly with Darwin's theory, and the two were happily wed. As one reflected the other, the taxonomy would organize all the cool things that evolution theory cooked up, and all was well. Not really, though. You see, plenty of people back then didn't speak Latin, and plenty of people today do not speak Latin. Linnaeus chose Latin specifically because it is a dead language, one that does not change to suit the time or modern needs. Thus, the organism's descriptions were based on whatever you could derive with two Latin or Latinish words. But because some folks didn't speak Latin back then, they continued to make up names or use ancestral words according to their own native taxonomic methods. This has led to many common names, which reflect a naming method outside Linnaean taxonomy that different cultures or backwards translations can lead to. For example, you might commonly call this a dog instead of its Latin name, Canis lupus familiaris, which specifies this organism from its more generalized form, commonly called the gray wolf, or Canis lupus. Dogs are commonly called worldwide Inu, Kilev, Skyli, Hund, Kuta, or Kili. If you were in Japan and said you were looking for a dog, a non-English speaking person would be clueless as to what you're looking for. However, a Japanese biologist who knows the basics of Linnaean taxonomy would understand you better if you said Canis lupus familiaris. Another of my favorite examples are sharks. For example, you might recognize this gal as a great white, but worldwide she could be called anything from white pointer, white devil, white death, or simply white shark. And that is a ton of names to keep track of versus its Greek-rooted taxonomic or scientific name of Carcharodon carcharias, which an ichthyologist, that's a fish biologist, would recognize what you meant. Ultimately, learning taxonomy is an incredible way for you to trace your roots. All life on Earth descends from common ancestry, and taxonomy is our way of keeping track of all the crazy twists and turns organisms take on the tree of life. It's almost like a life history lesson on where we come from and who we're related to. And I think that's pretty poetic. And if you think that's pretty poetic too, you must be a Know Atoll.